Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the CSTV. I'm your host, Kathleen Galtoto, Madam CS, and this is The Striker. Stay tuned and have it raw and real. The Striker today, we want to look at the events in Libya some years back and also look at the events in Kenya today, and we see whether there are some lessons that President Ruto, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, is supposed to run from what was happening in Libya 1 decade ago, or around 1.5 decade ago. Now, for a long time, Libya was Africa's glory in terms of economic development. They had the best of their life, and then all of a sudden, Gaddafi was actually declared a dictator. You know, the US marked him as a dictator, and you know, he had ruled Libya for a long time. But when you look at how the life in Libya was during Gaddafi's reign, it was something that actually some other African countries wanted, like, you know, to have. The economy was doing good. It was growing well. People's social aspects and, you know, basic social welfare was well taken of. Until the US entered in Libya and reminded Libya that they needed a democratic leader, and therefore Gaddafi was a dictator who was actually supposed to be taken out of power. So what happened? There was a civil strife in Libya, and then Gaddafi was murdered, and today we know where Libya is. Now, President Ruto, when he entered into power, he was among the people who spoke so hard against the Western and the European nations' activities in the continent. At some time, he said, there is no value of us African leaders being taken to Europe, invited by one country, and put in one school bus to be addressed. And he was very vocal about, you know, repositioning the position of Africa within the global political, economic, and social arena. You know, he was seen as a man on a mission. You know, the young people somewhat loved him when he started all these international trips and, you know, talking very strongly against, you know, the intimidation of the West in Africa, you know, how we are supposed to look at the international loaning system, etc. Then all of a sudden, we see kind of Ruto has become the best, you know, of the West allies. And then you saw Kenya was regarded as the ally of NATO, for example, and it has been, you know, supported to take its police officers to Haiti to fight the militias there. The other day, the EU actually welcomed Kenya to join them in the fight of pirates along the Yemen corridor. And, you know, a lot has been happening. The other day was on a state visit in the USA. So the one man who was once very strong against the Western world, all of a sudden now is being used by the same Western world to fight, you know, gangs in Haiti, etc. Mr. President, I think from where I stand, if I have to use my little history and look at what was happening in Libya, is like, one, the US and the Western world was very, very worried about your talks when you entered into power. And they had to look away to bring you closer to them. Then once they have brought you closer to them, they use you against your own people. Once they set you against your own people, they throw your country into anarchy. And just like that, the country becomes as the Libya style. Why am I saying this? President Ruto has been with the US, especially in the other day he had a state visit there. You know, the IMF is said to have had a hand in the finance bill 2024, you know, and all of a sudden, when the international media house, including the the Wall Street channel, when they are reporting about the situation in Kenya, they are reporting of the crimes against humanity that have been perpetrated in Kenya during these protests. They are talking about police brutality, police violence. They are talking about the president flowering the streets of Nairobi and other cities in the 47 counties with the military. They are talking about how the Kenya Kwanza leaders rudely, you know, spoke against the Kenyans. They didn't want to listen to Kenyans. So the question is, why is it that the allies of Kenya, the USA that said Kenya is even an ally of NATO, why is it that they are looking at the negatives only of this protest, and they are not anywhere saying, you know, President, you can do this to make things good? And you even saw the UN saying that they are watching closely events in Kenya. It tells you one thing, Mr. President. This Western world is reminding you that ICC too may be rodding. When I'm talking about ICC too may be rodding, we have seen photos being shared back, left and center. This police officer has shot these people have been killed. These photos are not circulating simply because they need to circulate. These photos are not circulating because Kenya has this freedom of media, etc. These photos are circulating for a reason. And let me tell you one thing I'm sure of, that few years to come from now, it may not be today, 1 or 2 years or 3 years from now, these photos will be used against somebody in the ICC. And just like that, somebody will either be pandled out of power, or somebody will be out of power and then will be pandled all the way to the ICC. The question is, who will this person be? So what I'm trying to say here is, the Western approach the president very close to them, and then now they want to throw him under the bus, and that's why the international community is concerned only about the killings and the use of police force in the country. And this should send a very good message to President Ruto. The military that is in the streets has to be withdrawn. And going forward, can you find a way of having a dialogue with the Chinese? You know, as the millenniums, they exist towards, you know, the past years, these were people who were not even concerned much about even meeting the leaders. But the Chinese, these ones are tribeless, they are fearless, they care less, you know, they articulate issues the way they are. And I think they need a dialogue. There are so many things that have been unconstitutionally done in this particular country, and these youths have been keeping quiet. The fact that they have put all these things together as their grievances and they want them to be addressed, it is a call that, Mr. President, force is not going to work here, because even the international community is not going to shield Kenya anywhere or to shield you at all. I saw a documentary by Al Jazeera, and I realized that they have even been taking the utterances of our members of parliament from the Kenya Kwanza government, women reps from Kenya Kwanza government. You know, they have been picking those utterances that they think are provocative, abusive, you know, limiting people's rights, etc. And when they were doing their documentary about President Dr. William Samoei Ruto, they were saying, you know, this one said this and this, this one said this and this. It tells you one thing, Mr. President. This West that pretends to be Kenya's ally has nothing good for Kenya. In fact, they would be very much happy if we continue fighting this war, if the protests continue, if we are thrown into anarchy the way Libya was thrown into anarchy. And just like that, they get leader of you who they know that when you entered into the government, you were very strong against the West. And that is something that the West cannot be comfortable. They normally say that you cannot have your cake and eat it. Trust me, there's no way the West can make you a friend at the same time you criticize them. So be very careful, be very cautious. The so-called friends are the greatest enemy of Kenya. Otherwise, what do you think, my dear viewers? I call upon your comments and views on the comment section below. Otherwise, kindly subscribe, like, share and comment on this video. Bye bye, see you next time.